must unite what has been set asunder.
We are TFR, Truth Frequency Radio.
Welcome to Phoenix Rising Radio. Now is the time to lift your mind higher. Now is the time to rise above. I am your host, Phoenix, and welcome to tonight's broadcast. Good evening and welcome, everyone. This is Phoenix. Hope you guys are doing well. It is Tuesday, September 5th, 2017. A lot going on. Man, a lot of craziness happening in the news. A lot of things you need to be aware of. A lot of things we're going to talk about this evening because, like the theme song says, there's a storm threatening my life today if I don't get some shelter. I may fade away. A lot of that going on. With us right now live, who's someone who's not fading away, and that's NeSe. How's it going, brother?
It's still rolling, and I'm still here.
There you go. Still rolling. You're still there. Very good. How are things up in your area of the country?
Well, things are definitely getting chillier. The crazy 30, 40 degrees differences in temperature is kind of bizarre in itself. But I think this is what's occurring across the country. Strange weather, global changing. What is this? Global warming, ice age, weather modification. All of the above.
Weather modification. We're going to talk about that. You know, big news tonight. The big news last time we were on was Hurricane Harvey, and our hearts go out in prayers to everyone in that area, Texas, Louisiana, and beyond, who were affected by that or still affected by that. People will be out of power for weeks. It is a disaster for multiple people. I think in one county alone, there was over 100. Oh, I think in Texas they say 100,000 homes that were totally uninhabitable. And you think about that, 100,000 homes, you know, how many people live in a house? 2, 3, 4. So you're talking, you know, upwards to a third to 500,000 people that are displaced by that one storm. But right now we have Hurricane Irma, which is battling down on the islands right now. It should be St. Martin's within 24 hours or less. And this thing is targeted to hit Florida. It's going to skirt along Cuba, and all the models, European, GFS, all of them are kind of converging, and the cone of what they call uncertainty is showing this thing hitting Florida, South Florida. And they already have a mandatory evacuation for Monroe County in Florida, which, if you're not familiar with, are all the Florida Keys. And if you're looking at the tip of Florida, it'd be the western side. That includes Key Largo. President Donald Trump's place there is going to take the brunt of this. And it appears that Miami the city of Miami is going to be giving evacuation orders possibly tomorrow or Thursday. Now, the reason for this, it is a Category 5 hurricane right now, and it has just been determined by the flights and all the hurricane researchers that this right now is the largest hurricane ever recorded in the Atlantic Basin since records have been kept. It's at 916 millibar with 225 mile an hour winds. That's crazy. And the thing is huge. This morning it was larger than the entire state of Ohio. And the modeling that they show on this thing, they're projecting that it will hit the tip of Florida as a Category 5 hurricane with these heavy 225 mile an hour winds and move straight up through the state. And some of the projections, NeSe, that I was looking at, some of the models, this thing goes up from the tip of Florida, just takes out the Keys, goes all the way up, all the way through the entire state. I mean, all the way, and maintains its hurricane strength, and the storm is larger than, it's like 800 miles wide, so it's larger than the state of Florida, and the damaging winds, the hurricane winds, extend past the entire state on the eastern shore and the western shore. If this thing models out the way they're showing it, dude, this nation's never seen anything like this.
Well, you know what? My spidey senses. I keep trying to think of a new term for it. My conspiracy senses start going off when you made the comment that it may be hitting towards Trump. And wouldn't that just be an incredible coincidence that Trump's little paradise there gets wiped out so he gets reimbursed to get it all rebuilt, all nice and neat how he wants it? Then it also makes me think about in Texas, just like with New Orleans, when they got hit, you know, the most devastation was in the poorer communities. And now if you go and look into it, of all of the development that's happening, this incredible development is happening in New Orleans, where it's basically restructuring where the poor live and the rich live.
Yeah, well, they always try to improve things and bring things in. And the thing about the Trump rebuilding Key Largo, dude, I don't think that when you say make it the way he wants it, that guy makes things the way he wants them now.
Right?
Donald Trump does not need insurance money. He's not thinking, oh, boy, maybe I can get something new in my house. He's got everything he wants. I mean, this is the guy that his private airplane was, whenever he got on Air Force One was a step down. He was like, oh, well, I guess it'll do. I mean, they say Trump's plane is like incredible compared to Air Force One. But, of course, Air Force One has all of the high-tech Air Force gadgets on it, you know, we've all heard about. Anyway, you're talking about weather warfare. We're going to talk a bit about this because I have one article that says weather warfare, globalists order geoengineers to shock and awe America with superstorms. Now, this could be happening. You know, there's a lot of talk about this, and I saw a Twitter feed today where it was showing Hurricane Irma here, and there's gravity waves shooting out from the middle of this thing like ripples in a pond. And people are like, that is really weird. And there's some very unusual things with this storm. Now, dig this. Right behind Hurricane Irma is another storm that just became a tropical storm, and it's Jose. Jose is coming up right behind Irma by just a few days. And they say on Friday, Hurricane Jose will be classified as a hurricane also. I mean, it's a tropical storm now, but it'll be a hurricane. Now, the path of Jose is exactly the same path of Irma. So as Irma goes down through the islands right now, and we start hearing destruction, I think already some islands have been hit in the Caribbean. When we see the destruction of Irma, everybody needs to be advised there's another hurricane right behind it that's going to follow in the same path. And that's what happened to St. Martin's years ago. I forget, it was like 22 years ago, a hurricane hit there, and it ripped the roofs off all these properties. And then another big storm came in behind it and dumped like inches and inches of rain. But the fact that we have another hurricane coming in that's going to follow the same path is very suspicious. I mean, yeah, I know it's hurricane season, but dude, how many times have you seen hurricanes like in a train following a track and going the same way? It's something odds here. And if this thing does what they say it's going to do, this is going to be bad, because we're already reporting right now that the National flood insurance program is like at its max. They can't even make their payments, and the insurance companies are tapped out about what's going on down in Texas. Now, we could actually get into a very interesting situation here, because when Irma hits, and I'm not saying if Irma hits, I'm saying when Irma hits, depending on the amount of destruction this thing does, this is going to be quite a shock to the United States economy. And then we have other factors going in. It's almost like we have a warfare going on here, and we're also, man, we are way overdue for some major earthquakes. The San Andreas fault area is overdue. The Cascadia fault zone up in the Pacific Northwest is overdue, and also the New Madrid. And we are in a super solar minimum right now that happens every 206 years, and we have never historically, as far back as they can determine, gone into one of these super minimum cycles on these 206-year cycles that they last for a few years. But we've never had one of these where the New Madrid earthquake fault zone did not erupt. So, man, we are prime for some major stuff here. A lot of people are saying, perhaps, you know, this eclipse we just experienced that swept down across all the continental United States was a portent or an omen of things to come, and we're seeing those things unravel right now.
Well, that would be my conclusion if you think about it with just my ancestors, of how they and how we've talked about how when you look towards the heavens and you see the positioning of these stars and planets, and if our indigenous ancestors were keeping track, then of course they would say, hey, when these planets are in this position, and whether we'll call it the Great Bear, Ursa Major, Ursa Minor, you know, and if it matches up with this, you know, whatever they called it back then prepare for this. You know, it's like the macrocosm and the microcosm. Right now, the squirrels up here, you know, that's the number one thing that I ask, you know, how fat do the squirrels look? You know, if the squirrels are getting fat really quick before the equinox, then you know that what your weather is going to be like for the winter. Unless, of course, you have a public park real near you and the squirrels get all the garbage. But for the most part, if you generalize with the squirrels on how fat they start getting and how quick, would depend on the weather in itself.
Well, we are forecasted to have a very severe and cold winter this year, because that's the other thing. Whenever we go into these solar cycles, these 206-year solar cycles, we also experience kind of like a mini ice age, and things get extremely cold. Now, also during this solar cycle period, not only are we prone to earthquakes. Now, of course, you know, this is worldwide. Anywhere that you're in a seismic zone worldwide, be prepared for this. And again, this isn't just like some crazy prediction. This is historical replication. These are known scientific cycles. This isn't you know, hoodoo. You know, this is like, this is known. It's historical. It's a scientific cycle. So if you live anywhere in the world where you're prone to earthquakes, And especially along the coast, I mean, be advised, you could potentially have the tsunami situations, the earthquake situations, but not only that, they say, it's also a time that historically volcanic eruptions, large ones, have happened. And one of those was in Iceland during one of these cycles, and it caused what was known as like the year without a summer. People died from this thing. Plants wouldn't grow because there was so much ash and stuff in the air. Now, the last time we had one of these major volcanic eruptions, we didn't have a lot of air traffic. And now when we do have air traffic, with our jet air traffic, when we have volcanic eruptions, especially around Iceland, sometimes it disrupts air travel. And I know the last time, a few years ago, we had one in Iceland. They actually grounded jets coming out of Europe, and people were stranded for a couple weeks. And the reason for that, and people have to understand this, is that volcanic ash, when it's in the air, when it's in the atmosphere, it's almost like glass. And it can be damaging to the jet engines. When a jet engine actually enters volcanic ash, it actually is abrasive, and the fast heating action of the turbine, the jet turbine, accelerates the process, and jet engines actually seize up. They just like stop right in midair, man. And it's extremely dangerous. And they have to really monitor this, because the volcanic ash can be at a dangerous level and you can't even see it. It may just be like things in the distance look slightly hazy with a little limited visibility, and the cumulative action of flying long distances at high altitudes through this stuff can be devastating. Now, that is why the Russians use the Bear bomber. And a lot of people say, hey, look at the Russians, their strategic bomber has propellers. Yeah, it does. And there's a reason for that. The Russian Bear bombers, every modern bomber in the world of the United States and NATO and all that, if there was major volcanic activity happening like in Iceland or other places that was causing the grounding of aircraft, the only aircraft that could take to the air strategically would be Russian aircraft, because they have propellers for that very reason. And, I'm just saying this is a strange time and a strange historical cycle we're entering here. And people need to be prepared for this. I think we're going to talk a little bit. Yeah, there's theory that it could be generated. I think it is. I think this is weather warfare, scalar technologies and all this. But there's going to be ramifications. And, I always tell people, say no to fear. And we can't be fearful about this stuff, but we have to be wise about it. And I think what we'll talk about a little bit tonight, NeSe, for everyone, is preparedness. And particularly if you're in Florida or any of these areas, and what you can do in all these situations in a sane, rational way. And, we'll talk about this preparedness, physical preparedness, and also spiritual and mental preparedness for all of us. What do you think?
Sounds good to me. The biggest thing that I was noticing, with this whole trial of going through my father's death, that I'm being a little bit more critical with people, and trying to keep my patience. But I've been noticing my tolerance has not been as high as it usually is. But then I started noticing that people have their own cycles. It's easy where we can point out to like a woman, with the incredible gift she has with her moon cycle or menstrual cycle, and we as silly men, we like, why don't you act normal with everything that they're going through this time? But I also think just because men don't bleed or have the same exact physical change, I think subconsciously, and I'm going to assume here physically, there is something going on within ourselves. And so I'm trying to recognize the cycles within myself. And as we recognize these cycles, then that's when you can adapt or make your course directions changes, or do what you can to try to overcome or at least if you can't overcome the cycles or the challenges within the cycles, you can at least figure out how to have the right attitude to go through these cycles. And this corresponds with you saying not feeding into the fear. And so if you can recognize the cycle and prepare for it, then it's easier to control your fear because it doesn't hit you so unsuddenly or unsettling, like you get nailed right away with something huge.
Yeah, when the key to that is situational awareness. Situational awareness. Be aware of things. Be aware of the weather. Be aware of potential threats, and also be a critical thinker. Do not be a follower. Be a leader, even if you're only leading yourself or your family. Just be a leader and be a critical thinker. Think for yourself. Assess and determine if a situation is potentially dangerous for you or not good for you, and take action. Do not be of the herd. Do not be of the herd mentality. And we see this all the time. See, the problem they're having down in Florida right now, Ney Sey, is that.
Apparently I just got a visitor. My kids will take care of it. Sorry.
No. I actually thought you hit like one of those like singing bowls or something. I thought you were doing like some type of like a vibration.
Right.
Sounded nice. Nice doorbell. Anyway, situational awareness and not being part of the herd, because if you're part of the herd and you're a follower, you are going to be stuck. Now, you have to wisely assess the situation. And what we have right now down in Florida, you have especially in southern Florida, you basically have people living there who have become numb to the fact, because there has not been a substantial wind event in that area to hit that area for about 11 years, 10, 11 years, I think. And what the problem is, a lot of people who live in Florida, especially South Florida, are older, more mature people, let me put it that way. And you have basically a turnover of people there. People get sick, they die. So a lot of people who were around during the last wind event, major event down there, aren't even on this earth anymore. Some of them have moved. They've gone to different areas. And you have a lot of people, because the economy and it's warm and they built all these condos, it's very pretty, and all this prime real estate. So you had a lot of people in the past 10 years have moved down there. So you have people who've actually lived in that area for a decade, and they have never seen anything bad. And so they're hearing all this, and I'm like, oh, yeah, we'll just stay. We'll ride it out. This is not something you want to ride out, people. Category 3 storm can kill you. A Category 2 can kill you. We're talking Category 5, potentially. Category 5. Category 5 will take the roof off your structure and level the structure. This is not something to mess around with. And here's the other thing: the mayor of Miami put a statement out this afternoon, Ney Sey, and he said that the city of Miami will be probably officially issuing an evacuation order for the city of Miami. Huge city, and they could possibly do it Wednesday evening or Thursday morning. Now, anybody in that area who heard that, I don't want to be critical of people, but let me put it this way. Number one, if I was living down there, which I wouldn't be, but if I were, we would be on the road right now. We would be on the road right now getting out of Florida, because that's way south in Florida. And if you get into a situation where they make a mandatory evacuation, and everyone's like, oh, well, gee, I guess we should evacuate because it's mandatory, you're going to have millions of people on like 2 roads. Dude, it's going to be a parking lot. It's going to be a disaster. They've already removed all tolls in Florida so people can effectively evacuate without problems. If you are down there and you are waiting for them to tell you to leave, you're too late. As a matter of fact, if you're thinking, whatever day you're thinking about leaving, you might want to leave a day earlier than that. I mean, you
then think of... Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, think about all the people that don't have the luxury of being able to move. the people that are homeless, the people that don't have vehicles, even the people that financially don't have the means to go someplace else and stay.
Well, then what you have a situation of community responsibility where people need to give homeless people rides. Now, it may sound scary to some people or something, but people are going to have to reach out and help people because, they do have a transient population down there because of the warmth and all that are going through. But this is an issue they're going to have to deal with. Now, and of course, some of those people won't be able to get out. But again, I mean, someone who's down there and they have put themselves in that position, they have put themselves in that position. The whole thing, if you don't have mobility, you don't have a car, you can't quickly move around, the fact that you, without forethought of the potential hazards, would locate yourself near a potential area where this could happen. That's just bad planning on your own part. And here's the bottom line, dude. Not everybody's going to be okay. Not everybody's going to be okay, and that's just the way life is. And but we do have to do the best for ourselves and for those around us, and to be wise in these things. And people, if you're down there, if there's anyone listening right now to us in that area, you really need to think about what you're doing. And here's the thing. If you pack up and have your valuables, and we're going to talk a little bit about some of these things in a minute, and you head north and nothing hits, well, no big deal. But if you decide to stay put and it hits, not good. Anyway, we'll cover all this when we return. We're rolling up on a break right now, and we will continue on with this discussion and other things because there's a lot of other things bearing down on us. We'll be right back. Don't go away.
No hate, no hype, no fear. We are DFR, your protection from deception.
There's something happening here, but what it is ain't exactly clear. There's a man with a gun over there, telling me I got to beware. I think it's time we stop, children. What's that sound? Everybody look what's going down.
Bonjour, Anine, hello, and hi. Welcome to Phoenix Rising on the Truth Frequency Network. Hope you're all enjoying the show this evening. And a special shout out to the chat room. This is NeSe on board with Phoenix, and we're discussing weather change, weather modification, the hurricanes, and what should you do? What is in the best interest of you and yours at this pivotal points? Wow, lips aren't working too well tonight. These pivotal points in our cycles. And so do we recognize the cycles and make our course direction changes, or do we continue on the cycles of the psychos? And here's Phoenix.
Oh yeah, cycles of the psychos. So true. People get caught in these negative loops. But as we were saying before we went to break here, this is a major event that's coming. Can things change? Yes, these storms can change, but I'm telling you, you have to err on the side of caution, especially with something this dangerous. Do not underestimate this. Do not underestimate this, because your life, could be literally dependent upon this. And don't think because this storm, the size of it, you can go inland. Oh, I have a friend who lives in the middle of Florida. I'll go there. May not be good enough. I'm serious. I've been watching the models on this thing. It's a freaking monster. Again, if you're coming in late, we're talking about the hurricane, Irma, which is right now has been classified as the largest hurricane recorded in the Atlantic Basin since records have been kept. 916 millibar, the last rating I saw. 225 mile an hour winds. This is category 5. And that's as high as the categories go. If we had more categories, it would probably be approaching category 6 now. So how do you deal with this? Number one.
Before you jump into that, Phoenix, if I may ask, have you ever heard of the Florida circles? There were these archaeological finds where there were these circles that at all the cardinal 4 directional points, they had other like bored holes, some of them going down 20, 30 feet, where they believe it was a total ceremonial spot. And, they assume that maybe there were big poles that were stuck into these holes, but they definitely could tell the circle basic structure of the point. And it made me thinking about with my ancestors and how you hear these jokes about, these Native Americans doing their rain dances. Well, that's not a joke to me, nor part of my culture. It's a fact. And I've witnessed some very crazy shifting of storms and splitting of storms myself. And it makes me think that at one point these indigenous tribes had these ceremonial spots where they would do ceremony, and from that ceremony create more or less natural, organic energy fields, where you would protect yourself. Because as you said, and I think you can easily find this on the web, where people have affected, where they've done a mass conscious recognizing of the situation and tried to do either cloud busting or storm busting, or even directing the storm elsewhere. So I do agree with you, that we do have the possibility of making change. However, in the same vein, when we go to our mobile devices and we look at a storm and we look at where it could hit, and we keep looking at the storm and back to where it could hit, are we causing a storm to be directed in that direction?
Yeah, that's an interesting thought. I'm sure it does amplify it to some effect, and that is part of it. And there's evidence of what you're saying. You're talking about the energetic. And when we're talking about weather modification, it is an energetic thing. The old school, they did like seeding of clouds and things like that. They still do that, but most of the weather modification, steering of storms is done by energetic weapons, space-based, some ground-based, that they bounce off the stratosphere down into an area, and they energetically heat different areas and stimulate different areas and cause different effects. Now, that being said, like a rain dance, when you have an amplified, unified group of people energetically projecting something, yes, it can affect things. Yes, it can. It's prayer. It's the power of prayer is what that is. Because prayer is a deep intent, desire, and gratitude of something that you cannot see. It's intangible, that you are making manifest. And there's evidence of this, and everyone listening to me will know what I'm talking about. There are instances that replay over and over and over in history where we see in an area where a tornado came through, let's say, and totally devastated a neighborhood, and lo and behold, there's one house where everything's gone, but there's like a closet in the middle, and inside the closet is a family, and they were in there. They were praying. They were all praying. They're hugging each other, and they were praying. we've seen this over and over and over. People have took refuge in bathtubs, people in closets, people in places where you would never survive, and they prayed to be protected and the storm wouldn't get them. And sure enough, it didn't, because what happened was they energetically put up enough energy, pure energy, that they put like a little force field around them. And it happens. It works. This has been seen historically over and over. Now, here's the thing, though. You don't tempt God. You don't say, like, I'll stay in the storm and I'll just pray it out. Yeah, you don't want to do that. I mean, if you're caught in the situation and you need to cry out to God, you cry out to God with all you can that he would save you. And this has been proven over and over and over historically. I mean, all types of stories like this. But in a situation where there's danger, you have to take action. You have to flee from danger. You have to protect yourself. And I think, we're talking about the mechanics of the storm, the energetics. Let's talk a little bit about that. Number one, I was saying before in the other segment of the show, don't wait till you're told to evacuate. There's no harm in loading up and going. But how do you do that? And see, now, because here's the things that you're facing. If you're living in a home, you have to prepare the home. You have to shutter it up, protect the windows the best you can, and all of that. Anything that's real valuable that you cannot take with you. A good place to actually store things, like if you have a whole lot of photographs that you can't take with you or something, I don't know why you wouldn't be able to, but something like that, and you have to evacuate, put them in your dishwasher if you have one. Okay, because what happens is the dishwasher is waterproof, right? You close the dishwasher up, you lock it, water doesn't come out. Well, that works both ways. Water doesn't go in either. So you put your valuables in top rack of the dishwasher and lock it up and pray that it's there when you come back, even if your house and dishwasher is there. But if you have flooded, a storm surge or something, there's a higher degree of possibility that your stuff won't be damaged. Now, the best thing to do is anything of great value, have it pre-identified. Especially, man, you have to locate stuff. Now, this is basic prep stuff. Your important papers, your insurance papers, your important documents like marriage certificates, birth certificates, passports, things like that. Important financial paperwork. Briefcase that stuff up, man. Bag that stuff up and be ready to roll with it and really think about it. And here's the best way to prepare for this. Look at your house and think, what would I need if I never could come back here? And that's the way to think about it, because you don't know. I mean, I know someone whose parents lost everything during Katrina, and they were used to it. They were both doctors, and they had the little routine. Hey, it's a hurricane warning. Well, we'll evacuate. They had a hotel they'd go to somewhere, out of the area, and they used like a little mini vacation. Well, they did that with Katrina, and guess what? They came back. Their home was 8 feet underwater because the levee broke. They lost everything, and there's stuff they could have took with them because they didn't take it seriously. So the best way to do this, people, is to look in your home or your apartment, wherever you live, and think to yourself, if you're thinking about evacuating, number one, what do I absolutely need? Number two, what will fit in the vehicle I'm taking with me? And number three, what would I want to have if I could never come back to this home again? That's a good start. You have anything to add to that?
Well, yeah, also up here in the north, what we utilize the spring and the equinox, the spring and the fall for, is that's when we're shifting, where you take your, I can't confirm nor deny, our get up and go bags are orientated to summer or winter. And you can never, ever go wrong with having a file cabinet. Even if it's just a single drawer file cabinet, legally they claim that they can go back 7 years on you. And so not that I think you should have 7 years of back paperwork, but there's things that are crucial in your file cabinet Whereas you can reach in there and the first 5, 6 hanging file folders are the ones that are the most important, and you can throw them in a, in a trash bag if need be, so you can get out quickly.
Exactly. Yeah, Ney Sey's talking about the go bags and being prepared like that.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
We keep a kit in our car, and you should have a kit in your car, in your vehicle. Whenever you're loading up, if you're having to evacuate, you should already have something in your vehicle. And when I say you should have something in your vehicle, you think about it this way. If you were in your vehicle traveling somewhere and something happened, something happened with the road, something happened with the traffic, and just imagine whatever season it's in, you could not go forward and you could not go back. You were stuck and you were out of walking distance of anywhere, and you were stuck on the road, and maybe you weren't going to move for a day, maybe 2. What would you need with you? That's the way to look at that. Like, oh, wow, I'd want something to drink. I'd probably want some coffee or tea. If you have children, what would they need? What kind of sanitary items would you need? What type would you need? Something to eat? Of course you would. What are you going to do when you sleep? Where will you sleep? What will you cover up with? Think about these things, and you should have that in your car. It's like a safety kit, a little bug out kit in your car. And, you can have maps in there. Mine's pretty extensive. I have like a locker type thing because I have a vehicle that can hold this in the back. And, you pop it open. It's pretty good. It's like the size of a Foot Locker, maybe a little bit larger. And, I can put quite a few things in there. But we do this so literally, if something were to happen, if we're out traveling, we'd be okay. We have something to eat, we have some drink, we'd be able to sleep, we'd be able to do, make repairs, different things like that. So think about that. Now, if you're evacuating up through Florida or out of any state, you have to have gasoline. And this is going to be an issue. We're going to start hearing stories about this. We always see them. Gas prices have already gone up. I actually knew a fellow years ago, Ney Sey, that it was his daughter and his son-in-law. This was during Katrina, and he was beside himself because they were down there doing something, and they were like vacationing or something like that. And they waited. They knew the storm was coming, but they waited until the evacuation order came. They didn't take it seriously, and he hadn't filled his tank up. So he only drove, I forget how far, out of the New Orleans area, and he was stranded on the side of the road. And they didn't have any gasoline, and they couldn't buy any. The gas stations were empty. So this dude, I kid you not, paid for a helicopter to fly to his daughter and his son gas cans because they didn't want to leave the car there, all their stuff. The helicopter actually landed near the road in the field and offloaded gasoline cans so this kid could put gas in his car. Now, most people don't have a rich dad that can pull a maneuver off like that. So think about this. How, do you have enough fuel? Cash, because if you don't have cash on you, that's going to be difficult too. So the basics, food, shelter, clothing. Think about this. If you're evacuating, okay, number one, let's go back to the loading of the car. What do you need from that house? What will you absolutely need? And what would you take with you if you knew that you could never return? Not saying that won't be the case, but, we're talking to cover all bases here. So you have all that, you get it loaded, you have a loading plan, then you have to have fuel and a plan of where you're going to go. But the key to this, you want to be out of there before the roads get busy. You want to be ahead of the crowds. You want to be a thinker, a leader. Even if you're a leader of yourself, don't be a sheep and a follower, because you'll be at the back of the herd, and you don't want to do that. So those are some suggestions about how to actually do this and what to do. Think about what you would need, and if you could never come back to that property, what would you absolutely take with you? Now, of course, you're not going to be able to take everything. You got to prioritize. Now, I was a firefighter years ago, and I will tell you right now, one of the biggest things that people would bemoan and cry and be upset about during fires was their photos. Wedding albums, all the photos of their children. Now, a lot of people digitize everything now, but, there's things, people have things from their family that their mother or father gave them down through generations. Think about that stuff, too, if you have room for it. So that's some basic stuff. Also, don't think that you're going to get in that car and stop, oh, man, we're hungry, stop at a McDonald's. You might be able to, but you might not be able to. So don't depend on normal services that you would. Try to think outside the box and be as self-sufficient as you can in all of this. And also this stress level, we're talking about the basic mechanics here of getting out of Dodge. Where will you stay? Will you have a hotel to stay in? Do you have a place planned out? How far inland do you go? What if you go in and you got to leave that place? There's a lot to think about, but you can't be overwhelmed with this.
Well, I think, sorry. Well, I think about like what just happened with Texas. And then if you look at Katrina as an example of the situation and what to learn from it. What I found out from Katrina, the biggest challenge that they had were the individuals that were on SSRIs, and they were out of their medications. And think about this, 100,000 homes, and I can't remember what the number is. I think it's over 50% of the population is now medicated. And if you do not have your backup of your medications, that is just a recipe for disaster.
Oh, yeah. Dude, that's the thing. The people are so medicated that a lot of the medications keep people alive. If for some reason the pharmaceutical chain were interrupted, we would have a significant portion of our population dead within 30 days. Because there are people out there that their medications literally keep them alive. Insulin is one, but there are many others. And there are some that these medications don't keep people alive, but if you go off on them, it can freaking kill you. There are antidepressants that people are on out there that if you were to stop cold turkey, you can go into a coma and die. Or if you're driving, you can go comatose. Imagine that, people driving down the road 60 miles an hour and they can't get their meds and all of a sudden they curl up in the fetal position while they're driving. Yeah, it happens. It happens. This is a critical thing that people have to think of. So if you need extra prescriptions, you should have these already. If you have a prepper mindset, and having a prepper mindset, I don't know, I almost, the word prepper, I guess it's good because it explains it to people, but if you have a warrior mindset, a survivor mindset, someone victorious, because the people who can withstand adversity and challenges and problems are victorious people. And you want to be victorious in this, in all these situations, for yourself and for those whom you love in your community. So, again, the big thing, don't be fearful. Man up. Woman up, be a warrior. Say, you know what? I've got a job to do. I have a dangerous situation. I've got to face this head on. I got to get off my butt, stop staring at the lights like a deer in the headlights, and take action. Take action.
Well, it's so easy for us to discuss these things, because it's all words, but we really hope that the individuals that listen to us can take action, even if it's, minusculely in the least, like when you go grocery shopping and you see, good cans that are still in good condition of some kind of food. If you can buy a couple extra cans each time you go grocery shopping, so you have that backup, but don't let it consume you. Because that's also where things can go majorly wrong, especially like mentally and emotionally. if you get wrapped up into that fear and like in your fear of not being prepared, because that's when it really bites you in the rear end. You know, if you're not prepared minusculely right now, then you're going to be in a world of hurt. And so it is critical that you do take the efforts to prepare. However, with all of that saying, if you want to be the one that is going to say, hey, I'm going to stick around and brave this out, more power to you. But please don't try to convince other people to stay with you.
Exactly. And let me make a point right now, like 3 minutes before the break. If indeed you are in one of these areas, and we're talking about Irma right now, it could be Jose next, it could be another one next, it could be a major earthquake or whatever disaster situation, but particularly storms like these predicted and pathed hurricanes that are deadly. If you do just decide to stay, say, you know what, I'm going to stay here. You need to do yourself and first responders and your family a favor. And what you need to do, if you're not going to prep and you're not going to leave, at least make sure you have a good black magic marker. Now, that black magic marker, what you want to do if you're alone or if you have family, you all need to do this. On the inside of your arm, your forearm, before the storm hits, you want to write your name clearly in black magic marker. And below that or beside that, please clearly put your social security number. And the reason for that is the indelible black magic marker will not wash off in the water, and God forbid your life is taken during the storm. They will be able, and I say they, the recovery teams, when they do find you, will be able to identify you and therefore notify your next of kin. So at least do that to help the first responders and also your family. And
I was thinking more along. I was thinking more along the lines of yes, that's great information there. But to add to that, I think you should be taking yoga and getting that whole sensation of yoga and the whole mind, body, and soul, and being within the moment and that flexibility. Because then, with all of that utilized as a professional in yoga and the flexibility, you'll be able to bend over far enough to kiss your arse goodbye.
That's a good plan. That's good advice. And even if you don't have the flexibility, I will guarantee you, if you're trying to withstand a category 5 hurricane, even if you're not flexible, it will help you be flexible, and it will bend you over so you can kiss your arse goodbye in those high winds. We're talking 200-mile-an-hour winds with this thing. So, again, I'm not to be morbid about that, but at least do that if you are not evacuating from these danger areas, and it'll wash off, with time if you survive and everything's okay. But again, do this for the first responders, because there's nothing as frustrating to the officials than to stack up bodies in a morgue and say, oh my God, how are we going to identify everyone here? Sometimes that's difficult, especially with young children. Anyway, we're rolling up on a break, and we're going to talk about a few other things when we come back. This storm, geoengineering, what could possibly be behind all of this, and what else is coming. And again, this isn't a doom fest tonight, but this is a reality check of some of the energetics that we're entering right now in North America and the world. And it has to do with the solar cycle, the solar minimum, and some things that are just long overdue. And again, this isn't being fearfully speculative. This is history. Anyway, we'll be right back after this break. Don't go away.
You are now tuned into the truth frequency.
Your protection from deception. This is Truth Frequency Radio.
Welcome to Phoenix Rising Radio. Now is the time to lift your mind higher. Now is the time to rise above. I am your host, Phoenix, and welcome to tonight's broadcast. And we're back, second hour of Phoenix Rising Radio here this evening on Truth Frequency Radio, where truth is premier. Truth is premier. Do you support the truth? Are you a supporter of the truth? Many of our listeners are. If you're not, find out how you can be. Go over to truthfrequencyradio.com. Look for Phoenix Rising Radio. Find out how you can become a supporter, a listener, and have access to not only our program in high definition, all the downloads of the past programs, but all the other great hosts and programs right here on Truth Frequency Radio. Also, check out My Patriot Supply. My Patriot Supply has all your needs for disaster preparedness, every level. Check it out, mypatriotsupply.com. Yeah, I got some interesting information during the break here, Ney Sey. Lucky, another host right here on TFR, many know Lucky in her program. She actually said Phoenix Tropical Depression 13 forms in the Gulf of Mexico. As it strengthens, it will become Hurricane Katia. Yeah, I was saw that, Lucky, and I didn't want to overwhelm everyone. I mean, we have the Harvey still ongoing, the devastation from that. We have Irma barreling down on the islands right now, the Caribbeans, Cuba and Florida, going up possibly into Georgia and other areas. Jose right behind it, but also we have this tropical depression that came off the Yucatan. It actually swept in from the Pacific, I believe, across the Yucatan, and is out there right now. And they're saying that tropical depression 13 forms in the Gulf, and this will be Hurricane Katia. So we could literally have 3 hurricanes, one right after the other, in the southern United States, in the Gulf again, and the East Coast, and who knows where these things will go. So everyone needs to prepare. Also, she shared something with me that I thought was very cool. She said, guys, we have the best people here at TFR, the listeners. She says, I am overwhelmed by the folks in the chat room with the new hurricane bearing down on Florida. Nagward is saying that he may be stuck, and the whole chat room is offering him help to get the hell out of there. Very good. You know, that's inspiring. That inspires me. And, you know, that's the thing about humanity. That's the thing about humanity. You know, we hear all this talk, make America great again, make America great again. You know what? That's nice. But let me tell you something nicer. Make the world great again. You know, we as human beings, we can rise up. We can rise above through the hardships that this life throws at us, that things that happen on Earth, and we reach out to one another. We help one another. Ney Sey?
Well, this is what we've talked about before, about taking the opportunity to meet your community, to go out and about and knock on your neighbor's door and say, hey, I live next door, neighbor, you know, and to share and to be open-minded to the community. So in the events of these situations, it's not so awkward to where you have to group together, to where you're already grouped together. And it's really interesting, you know, Dick Gregory just passed the day before the eclipse. And he always used to point out the irony of these hurricanes and stuff where they come off of the Cape of Africa, where the earliest known slave ships used to take port out of as they would come across the transatlantic current and come into the Caribbean islands in Florida, where they would offload the slaves. And then if you look at the, depending on which maps you actually trust, if you look at the East Coast and how it's kind of like an arc, you know, imagine the thousands of years of these hurricanes hitting the East Coast and just chewing away at the coast as it lost its power up towards Maine. You can like see that arc.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, exactly. Just like an area of a target near the bullseye gets worn down faster. Yeah, same. And I've noticed that, you know, the entire Gulf region, it's basically a crater from an ancient meteorite. That's a large crater. And yeah, these sections of the coastline have been battered down and different things. You know, the whole thing, too, about helping our neighbors. There's something, and I wrote about this in my book, Have a Plan, Plan to Act. It's called the 3-day effect. And I learned about this years ago whenever I was working with emergency management type positions. And the 3-day effect is a phenomenon that is global. It's worldwide, with the exception of Japan. And we'll get into that later. But the Japanese people, for some reason, and not the Chinese, just Japanese, don't fit this model, but everybody else does. And what the 3-day effect is this: when you have a disaster, and you can think about what I'm about to tell you, and you can remember back from past incidents maybe you experienced or you've read about. What happens on the first day? Boom, a big event happens. The survivors are there. They're shocked. Like there's no power. There's no, services are down. Like, oh my God, what happened? Everybody's kind of like in shock, and they're surveying around, looking around. They poke out. That's the first day. Day 2, like verging on the first day to day 2, people come out and the neighbors reconnect. Like you were saying, you should do it before, and yeah, you should. But people in modern society don't interact a lot, but they'll reconnect. Hey, how's it going? Are you okay? What's going on? Everybody starts sharing information. And that's when people get together and they're like, hey, what about the widow who lives down the street? Has anybody seen her? Is she okay? And the next thing you know, you have 3 or 4 guys or women walking down the street going to the lady at the end of the road that everybody knows lives alone. And they all knock on the door. Are you okay? Can we help you? And people kind of band together like that. Then that progresses into what I call like the drum circle type thing. That's whenever you have people kind of band together. It's like, what are we going to do with all of our food and all this, all our freezer? Then you start having cookouts and people banding together, and you basically end up with like what I call a little drum circle phenomena, where people kind of communally have a get-together. And what happens with these communal get-togethers, people, and this is a phenomena that plays out everywhere. And no matter if it's a power outage, a hurricane, a tornado that hit a large area, basically with large area disasters, okay? And so people have these community get-togethers. They start talking and everything, and it almost becomes like a party. Oh, like, hey, I've got some beer over here. Oh, cool. Yeah, the fridge is working. It's getting warm. We might as well drink it. The coolers come out, and people start grilling and doing things and helping one another. Oh, I have a little extra of this. Oh, you need this. And you have that. And what happens is people start sharing information. Oh, I heard this on the radio. Oh, they said this. And they start sharing information about what's going, and people become very optimistic. They actually have this warm feeling inside, like a glow, and it's like, you know what, we'll get through this. It's tough, but we'll all get through it. And people become very optimistic. Then the 3rd day hits. On the 3rd day, I think it's a result of this extreme optimism. What happens is people wake up and it's like nothing's changed. It's like, wait a minute, the power's not back on yet. That we still don't have people here from the agencies, or they came and they left, or they didn't have enough. And then people start complaining. And that's when the shortages really start kicking in, because a lot of people don't prepare. They say they don't have things like they should. And that's when people start getting really hungry. And it's called the 3-day effect. And that is when human nature clicks, baby. Something happens. That's when you start seeing people spray painting on garage doors. Looters will be shot. That's when you start seeing guys sitting out front of their house in a lawn chair with a shotgun. That's when people start doing weird stuff, and the violence breaks out. And emergency planners and emergency FEMA personnel, state personnel, they know this. They're trained in this, and everybody, especially law enforcement, ratchets up. And that's when you see the National Guard hit the streets and curfews go into effect, because it's a psychological phenomena that sweeps through society, and that's when looting, violence, and really bad things start to happen. So if everyone's listening right now and you're going to experience and go through something like this, be aware that on the third day, things change. Now, how do you deal with that? How would you deal with that? Ney Sey, if you knew you had this knowledge, you're like, knowledge is power. Okay, well, we've just learned this, that on the third day, people begin to get kind of violent, or they're desperate. Desperate people do desperate things. How would you deal with this?
Well, I would reach over my shoulder and grab my sword and say, by the power of Grayskull, and then I'll get up out of my chair and start kicking some arse. No, well, I mean, me and my children, we discuss this, and we have, what are plans A, B, and C, and unfortunately, I don't tell a lot of people this, but if the proverbial fan was to be struck by the excrement, I would probably do the quick checkout route instead of burdening people with an anchor. But if I thought it was feasible to continue the struggle of survival, then yes, of course. But it's to each his own to how to be prepared. I think it's rather silly not to be somewhat prepared, simplistically just to have that get up and go bag, something that you can, a backpack that you strap on, and you have the basics for at least 3 days where you can hoof it somewhere, and I mean, in a perfect, wonderful world, we would have all of our escape plans implemented for all and not just the elites, because you can only imagine how well the elites have their escape routes, because they have the money to do it. And it's unfortunate, because there are those at the bottom that will go through the hardest struggles.
Well, see, that's where we return back to this point, like I was saying, be a leader, not a follower. And yeah, they have their escape plans, and you say in a good and perfect world, everyone would. Okay, well, you know what? I choose to have a good and perfect world. Therefore, I will have my own plan. I don't need some government official to tell me what to do or how to do it or when to do it, because more than likely what they tell you to do and how to do and where to do it, yeah, it might not be a good thing. So you have to be independent on this and think about this. Now, going back to the point, the 3-day phenomena that I was talking about, it's a topic a lot of people don't like to discuss. Some people do, really love to discuss it, but it's protection, self-protection. There were things that happening. Now, I've been aware of the 3-day phenomenon for years and have seen some studies in it and was very aware of it, and actually talked to people about it before Sandy hit, because we knew Hurricane Sandy was coming. We talked about a week before it hit, and it did. And we had discussed back then about the 3-day phenomenon, let people know. And so just as like a student of human nature and, observing things, I didn't experience that, thank God. I wasn't up in that area. I mean, here in the Northeast, we did have some problems. We lost power, and we were pretty much prepared for it. But up in the really heavy affected areas where it was very urbane, very urban areas, people started reporting, and lo and behold, it was on the 3rd day and after, about strange things happening at night. I mean, people being terrified and holding baseball bats in the dark, praying that their door didn't get kicked in because, dude, weird stuff starts to happen in urban areas because people are hungry, people are desperate, and you actually have people do things that would normally never do them, but they're in desperation because they have children who may be in need, or whatever. And then you throw in the basic criminal element, drug addicts, those who take advantage of things and loot. But that's when this all starts. And so you have to be able to protect yourself effectively, legally, and you have to really put some forethought into this because, you know, our highest responsibility as human beings is to love one another. It truly is. And so, you know, you really have to put some spiritual thought and care into all of this. You know, there are people out there who aren't. There's some pretty bad actors out there, and you have to be aware of this. And you have to be able to defend yourself and your family. There's a lot of single women out there. There's a lot of single parents out there, women with children. And again, it's nothing to be fearful of, but you as a warrior, and when I say a warrior, I mean everybody, because we all should have the warrior spirit, the fighting spirit, the warrior inside of you that rises up and you can defend yourself. Everybody, I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're a 70-year-old Nana. 70-year-old Nana, you better be able to pick something up and defend your home. And that happens. I love the stories. Dude, have you ever read the stories about a grandmother that like grabbed a revolver or something and defended herself from 3 thugs that came in? It happens, you know, because people have this fighting spirit. And, you know, we don't live in the Wild West anymore, but the Wild West type energetic returns. I'm telling you, again, this isn't just like a theory or a rumor. This is fact. This is a cyclical thing, like we were talking about early in the program. They say about the cycles of the sun, these energetic cycles. This is a cycle, an interesting, observable, and you can plot it out. Phenomena. It happens. So everyone be aware of that. If you're going to be in these affected areas, know about the 3-day effect. On the 3rd day, after your little drum circle and everybody's all happy, not happy, I mean, everyone's still distressed, but there's like an uplifting spirit on the 1st and 2nd day. Watch out. When the sun rises on the 3rd day, and especially when the sun sets and there's still no power, things get... And
nothing makes you more proud as a parent when your child will argue and figure out that it's easier to have the simple little Beretta with a clip than using a revolver when it comes to that situation.
Yeah, the whole personal protection thing is the personal protection thing. And, you know, I have and pretty much intentionally, no, not pretty much, very, very intentionally avoided that topic for years. People have asked me about it. They want to know different things. No, that's your responsibility. You need to self-educate yourself on there. And there's a lot of people that can help you if you're not familiar with it. But it's nothing to be fearful of. Again, what we're talking about, NeSe, your cultural heritage of the Native American, my cultural heritage as a settler here in North America, like most people, our families came from Europe, a lot of us, a lot of Europeans, and my family was from Europe, England, Ireland, etc. And they came over, they had a different lifestyle. Your families did, my families did. It would be unheard of to not have a full pantry and a pantry and a larder. And the reason they had this, when things went awry, there was no government to bail you out. There was no Social Security. There was no food stamps. There was no SNAP program or WIC or all these programs that are out there right now, these social things. There was no reservation council. There was none of that. I mean, you had to be independent and care for yourself, and it wasn't being paranoid, it was being smart. And when they would bring in their crops or get things, they would put up extra. They would store things, they wouldn't waste it. And if the crops failed or there was a bad storm or something happened where nature didn't work the way it normally does, they would survive. They would survive, and they would have things put back. They knew how to store things. And this is an ancient, lost art. I mean, we should all reach back to our ancestors and learn these things. And again, I mean, I'm talking all skills, man. I'm not just talking about preserving food, gardening, farming, animal husbandry. I'm talking about all skills. I mean, dude, there's things that are being lost right now in this nation, in your Native American culture. I know there's more of an effort to keep that alive, thank God, because that's the way it was always passed down, and there's still a passion for it. But I know that that there's a problem there, and the Native Americans too. Young people just don't want to know this stuff. But, dude, I'm talking about like quilting, woodworking, skills, how to make things, that people knew and they passed down. Just people don't even know how to cook. Everybody should know how to cook, girls and boys, how to sew. How many people have lost the art of sewing? I mean, there are people out there, they don't even have sewing kits in their house.
It makes me think of when I share with you of how we have these cardinal points of the cycle of the year with the equinoxes and the solstice. Now that and remember, as I told you guys, sunrise and sunset, calculate it, because I believe we're about to go into the equinox this weekend. However, but that being said, at the equinox was a harvest festival where people would do just as you said. They would be the harvest, and people would gather together and they would trade and they would barter with their wares, where it was even like, I remember hearing of my grandma where they would have canning parties where the women of the church would get together and they all can different things, and then they would trade, so everybody would have their shelves. I remember my grandparents, they had like 5-6 jars deep and maybe 4 or 5 shelves of canning goods.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a lost art. Fortunately, where we're living here in the Northeast, there's a lot of Amish people and Mennonite people, and those ways are still, still vibrant here, especially with the Amish. It's amazing to watch them and to live among them, and it's pretty cool. I mean, dude, I have horses and buggies going in front of my house all day. Seriously. And it's not because they're just like, doing it for sport. That's their transportation. And so there's still a seed of this alive on the reservations and in the country areas and even in the urban areas. People need to reach out to their elders and revive this information. One of my favorite series of books when I was younger was the Foxfire series. And the Foxfire series was a group of books. If you're not familiar with this, you can do a search engine thing on it, Foxfire. And it actually was a private high school in Georgia, I believe it was. And they actually had a project where they went out, and one of the, not professors, but teachers realized the importance of these lost skills, of these ancient ways that have been carried down, and orally taught generation to generation, was being lost to the modern society. So they went out and reached out in the most remote areas and had these wonderful people teach them things, write it down, tell stories, and it's called the Foxfire series. It's absolutely wonderful book series, and I would encourage anyone to get that. I used to have many of the copies, but over the years, I think I only have a couple on my bookshelf right now. I'm looking over here.
I remember as I got more involved with my spirituality and my Native American heritage and learning from some of these elders, some of the things they did. And when you hear stories about how Native Americans could run down a deer And you'd think, how can you run down a deer? Well, it's quite simplistic, because a deer, when it gets startled, it will run in a counterclockwise route. And so then as soon as you startle a deer, you take off. As soon as you hear the arc or the curve of the deer going, you know it's going to go counterclockwise, and a deer will take off with everything it has, and it will run until it's exhausted, which is usually about 1.5 miles.
Oh, we've exhausted.
Real people, real radio. Wherever you are, make it TFR. Truth Frequency Radio.
There's something happening here, but what it is ain't exactly clear. There's a man with a gun over there, telling me I got to beware. I think it's time we stop, children. What's that sound? Everybody look what's going down.
Buddy, we're back, and the second hour of Phoenix Rising Radio. I'm not the second hour, but the last segment of Phoenix Rising Radio this evening. And I was reading over some of the messages again. John B. King was talking about, he says he's got Scotty Lopez on his show on Wednesday. And he says he has a scenario that's not being looked at, and be sure and check it out. He's talking about if the Hurricane Irma gets into the Gulf. And originally, there have been so many of the models that have showed many different things. But what John B. King is saying, he believes that they are attempting to take out the oil fields and all that infrastructure, and that very well could be. I agree with John that this is intentional. They are steering these storms. This is weather warfare, and there's a lot to this scenario. You know, I don't want to overwhelm people with all this, and there are a lot of things we're facing here. Again, all the news about North Korea, the nukes with North Korea, the emergency meetings that are going on right now. This is a serious situation. They're estimating that North Korea potentially has over 60 nuclear weapons already, and that this could get pretty weird.
Here's one for you, Phoenix. Have you seen the TV series Invasion?
No, I have not. I'm not a big TV guy. No, I haven't seen that.
The premise of it was extraterrestrial invasion. However, they were doing it on the backside of a storm. And so when you brought that up about the whole Gulf and trying to take out our infrastructure of the oil companies and stuff, what if this is a weaponized war with weather, and all of a sudden on the backside of all of these tropical storms and hurricanes coming in are a bunch of fleets of Russia, China, and Korea coming on?
I have a theory about that. Now, there was a TV series out, or a movie. It was called Category 7. It came out a few years ago about multiple hurricanes that hit the United States that reached up to Category 7, and they basically really wiped out the U.S. Now, I have a theory about this. If indeed what you're saying, these invasion things, there is a way this would be done. Now, in the ultimate doom scenario, we would have these manufactured, these steered hurricanes really overstress and devastate the United States or along the eastern seaboard, the Gulf, and all of that, basically decapitating our emergency services. Dude, could you imagine if after we get hit like 3 major hurricanes and our resources and our emergency services are depleted, then we have an earthquake? Say that something happened, they had weapons, scalar weapons, etc., that they could unleash an earthquake on the New Madrid Fault and the Cascadia, possibly the New Madrid. Now, dig this. We have these massive earthquakes, these 3 major earthquakes. We've had all of these storms. Then North Korea or whoever hits us with a EMP weapon. And that EMP weapon, boom, takes off all the power, knocks down the grid. Now, this scenario about the use of EMP weapons, a lot of people don't understand how this goes. And being in the military, the scenario I know very well, what the old Soviet doctrine was, and you've seen this played out in a few movies like Red Dawn and a few other things about an EMP attack and then an invasion. But it doesn't happen like that. They don't do the EMP and attack. The theory was what the Soviet plan was because of so many people in the United States who are armed. That was a big issue with the Nazis and even Japan during World War II, is they knew they couldn't attack the United States. It would be a problem because of the Second Amendment, and we're all avid hunters, we're all armed, etc. So what is a nation to do? If they were to deploy the EMP devices, the weapons, airburst, and knock out our grid, the plan was they wouldn't invade. They would wait. They would wait months because it by the very own estimates of the United States government, 90% of the population of the United States would die. And that would be the result of, like we were saying before, you brought up a lack of medication. A lot of people are sick and wouldn't be able to make it. Also, people would die from disease, bad water, and infections like that, starvation, and also violence. And so basically you'd have all the weak and sick people die off, because we have like 50% of the people on government aid now. So all those people would basically die off, and the sick would die off, and the violent would basically kill each other, and it would be very violent like that. And then people would die not only from disease but also accidents, accidental fires from trying to warm themselves or cook, or just simple things like getting cut and dying from an infection. So they're estimating that 90% of the population would die off. Then what the plan was they would then invade the United States, but not as invaders. They would present themselves as humanitarian aid. They would come in like, oh, we're here to help. And they would have a lot of English signs, English speakers, here's food, here's medication. And those that survived who weren't not violent would basically see them not as invaders, but as saviors, as liberators, and would just do whatever they said to get their food and medication. Now, the strong portion that remained would be a lesser force and highly concentrated and be easier to weed out with military power. And that was the doctrine. So, yeah, that could all play out. A lot of people say, why isn't, the United States mentioned in the book of Revelation? Yeah, well, maybe that's why. I don't know. And I'm not saying this will happen. I don't want to put this whole doom fest on here, but there are powers out there that would love to see this happen to the United States. And you know what? Let's get into the religious and spiritual aspect of this, because even your people, the Native Americans, had prophesied that something like this would happen to the white invaders in the end. Is that not true?
Well, we do have our seventh fire prophecy, where it talks about at this pivotal point that the younger people will wake up and see the cusp that we're on, and they'll go back to the elders, and some of the elders would have fallen asleep, or some of the elders would be fearful of sharing, but there would be this choice of whether taking the right path or the wrong path. And that's what I do believe we're at. And, more than just the Anishinaabe thought this, but then when it really comes down to it in the metaphysical aspect of it all, where you are most free is when you realize that you are just a field. You are just energy. And that energy is housed in these incredible vessels of our bodies. and energy can't be destroyed. It just gets transferred from one state to the other state. And that's the ultimate freedom. That's the ultimate insurance, is when you're at peace with yourself, that when you give up the body, that the spirit goes on to the next realm of it.
Yeah, that is so true. And we are energetic beings. And this is a spiritual warfare, dude. This is the archonic forces on their last stand, these demonic archonic forces that have subverted and messed with humanity for millennia. They're coming to their end. And this is a battle. You know, there are spiritual works, there are spiritual guidebooks and different religions that all talk about the great end time battle. Dude, this is it. We are entering the great end time battle right now. And that great
that's a tough one, because, you know, especially with what I just went through and this systematic death industry of hospitals and hospice and nursing homes, and the fact that we go and pay our state and federal taxes, and those taxes are utilized to pay for bombs to be made, which are being dropped on innocent people. You know, there's part of me that's like, bring the judgment on, you know, but then there's also part of me where I recognize the innocent of these children. And then I find the solitude in that it is what it was, where the energies or the dichotomy is going back and forth and oscillating. And one of the biggest goals is just to find balance, you know. But if you want to be a warrior of love, then be the warrior of love, because it does seemingly show with critical thinking that we are missing these opportunities of being warriors of love and getting wrapped up or caught up in the fear of it.
Exactly. And when I say, I want to clarify that, you know, you made me think that possibly I wasn't being clear in this. When I tell everyone that you're a warrior, you are. And when I say warrior, I'm talking about that fire inside your heart, that light inside your heart. And I don't care who you are. I don't care how young you are, how old you are, if you're a man, you're a woman, you're disabled, you're in great shape, you're not. I don't care. That fire, if my words are reverberating in your ears right now, you have the warrior spirit in you that you can kindle. And it's not a violent thing. It can be if it needs to be, but the ultimate goal of a warrior is to never fight a battle. That's the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal of a true warrior is to win a victory without fighting. To find a path, to find a way that you are victorious, that you succeed, that those around you do well, and they live in peace. That's the ultimate goal of a warrior. Sometimes it goes the other way, and sometimes you have to rise up with whatever force is necessary to protect yourselves, protect you and those whom you love. And that's just the reality of the existence we are in right now. But it's that balance, of love, because love is the most powerful force that you can have. To compassionately execute the role of a warrior is the ultimate goal. To be a warrior with compassion, and passion and compassion. And I tell you what, sometimes you've all heard the term tough love. You know what I mean? Tough love. Sometimes tough love is very tough and is dealt out in a tough way, but it's necessary because there's no other means to that end to preserve life and well-being. Now, let's bring this all around, because we how much time we have. Let me check our time on our switchboard here. I just wanted to again encourage everyone to take action. If you're in a dangerous area, do not be the victim. Do not be the victim in this. Do not wait to be told what to do. Have critical thought. Think about things. Rise up. Be the warrior right now. Again, I don't care who you are. I don't care where you're at. I don't care how old you are. I don't care what shape you're in or what you have or what you don't have. You can do this. I know you can do this. And you know you can do this, even if you haven't done it before. Say no to the fear. Say, man, this is a scary thing. They're saying this could happen and this could happen. Yep, okay. So you look at the fear and like, suck it up, take a big breath and say, okay, I can do this. And take action. Do not be like the deer caught in the headlights. Do not freeze in inaction. Slap yourself out of it, snap out of it and man up, woman up, and be the warrior that you know that you are, and protect yourself and those whom you love and your community. Be there. Be the person that reaches out and helps, and be aware of the 3-day effect, the 3-day phenomenon. Be advised about that. Be cautious about that. Be able to protect yourself, your community, those around you, and to help. And don't forget this too. Sometimes when people do desperate things, what's the cause of this? Why are they doing this? Why are they acting this way? Are they so desperate for food, for water? What's the solution? Perhaps they're being intimidating. Can you help them? Can you defuse the situation? Can you say, hey, man or woman, it doesn't have to be this way. What's wrong? What do you need? And maybe they'll break down and say, I've got a child at home who's dying. It doesn't have any water. You never know. This takes wisdom and strength. Wisdom and strength and faith. And so, this is a time to rise above fear and inaction.
Well, this may be ego because I'm talking about my world here now. This weekend I'm going to an outdoor festival where I'm going to be bringing my cannabis res solution booth and going to be slinging T-shirts, and I have a traveling cannabis museum with over 100 byproducts, and the event is called Shangri-La, and it's a point of where artists get together, and there is this community of festy kids. And the band that puts this on is called Wookie Foot, and I say that for the Woo crew, wookiefoot.com. But it's a wonderful opportunity where these people connect, and there is literally a network of youth out there that have connected to the point of where some of them can cut off from the system and travel around the country, year round. And it's pretty incredible to witness and see the potential of all of this power. But one of the things that I'm bringing to this outdoor festival is new T-shirts that I just had made up, and they're called the Cannabis Resolution Party. And I want to try to start a new political party with across-the-board legalization of cannabis and starting a cannabis community. And because when you talk about those basic needs of food, shelter, and clothing, it all can be attained with 100,000 potential byproducts of cultivating cannabis.
True, and is highly sustainable and renewable. That's a big thing about it. And I'm a big advocate also for that. It should be 100% legal and promoted and really supported by this government and all governments of the world, because it can help so many people. That's a public event. How can people go there? Let's say somebody's down in Florida and like, okay, all right, Phoenix, I'm going to evacuate. Where do they go? Give them a place to evacuate to.
If there's anybody in Florida that wants to come and they have the means of transportation and they need a place to go, if they contact me, I know I can get at least 2 people in right off the bat for sure. So if you need a place to go for this weekend and you're into the whole hippie love culture and good vibes and being respectful, this is an incredible event. But if you just check out wookiefoot.com, it's Shangri-La. And Phoenix, if you and your missus want to come, by all means, I'll get you in. It's pretty exciting. The energy is crazy. One thing that you hear throughout the event is welcome home, and people are constantly helping each other, and people barter. Like you said, people will make things at home and they'll come to this event and they'll be sharing what they've made over the year, and they trade. And yeah, it's a pretty cool event. NACO, Medicine for the People. I think Trevor Hall's going to be there.
Where is this exactly located, and how can people get more information about this, Ney Sey?
Yep, southern Minnesota, just 10 minutes north of a town called Albert Lee, Minnesota. It's 5 minutes north of the Iowa border, and it's Harmony Park is the venue. The event is called Shangri-La, and the band that puts it on is Wookiefoot. And you can go to wookiefoot.com, WOOKIEFOOT.com. And actually, I was going to talk to you, Phoenix. I'm trying to get the creator of Wookiefoot to be a guest on the show, because this Mark Murphy, this incredible individual who's been approached by practically every major label, he said, no, I'm not going to be a slave to the music industry. And he's a pretty incredible man. I've known the pleasure of knowing him for 17 years now. And my brother Jojo, who's also part of the band.
Very cool. Well, that's neat, man. I hope you have a good time. And that's the thing. We face things like are hitting our nation right now, but there's good stuff. There's good things. And we as a species, as human beings, no matter what happens, Harvey, Irma, name a storm, North Korea, we can get through this, and we will get through this. This is part of the whole process called the leveling. We've all anticipated and wanted something new. Everybody wanted the old system that was oppressive and, domineering to go away and to change. And it's going to happen. It's going to happen. It's a cycle of way things happen, and those energetics are supporting it now, but it will not happen without a shaking. Things are going to shake, earthquakes, storms, possibly wars and rumors of wars. But the message I want to get to everybody tonight is to wake up, rise above, say no to fear, face the situation head on, think for yourselves. Don't wait for somebody to tell you what to do. Take responsibility for yourself, your own care. Don't stand in a line. Do not stand. If you have to, you will. But I will guarantee you the last place you want to be is standing in a line with your hand out, in a government line for anything, food, water, whatever. Yes, it happens. People get caught flat-footed, but do not allow yourself to get in that situation, because I will guarantee you that's not where you want to be, because the place you need to be during a major event or a disaster is where everyone else isn't. Do not be in that mess. Make yourself clear of it if you can get away from there. And if there's someone who needs help, help them out. We need to rise up now, and as a community, as people, as global warriors, and love one another and support one another. Don't wait for the government to do it, because, hang on a second, let me think about it. Oh, yeah, that doesn't work out too well. You can look out through history. There's a benevolent governments that come along, but not that many. So don't wait for the government to help you or your neighborhood. Yeah, they come around, teams come around, first responders, wonderful people, good people like you and I. But You be your own first responder. You be your own hero. You be the hero in your own life, your family's life, and your neighbor's life. And dig this. Could you imagine if we all try to be our own heroes? That way you don't have an entire community of people who are victims. You have an entire community of people who are heroes and victorious. And that's what we're going for. So don't be afraid of this stuff. But you know what? Again, I'm not kidding. Man up, woman up, and take responsibility right now. And be aware because things are getting funky.
And come join me at Shangri-La or in Shangri-La in Harmony Park. The Megaphone at gmail.com if you're serious. The Megaphone at gmail.com. And to Korea, I say drop egos, not bombs.
Drop egos, not bombs. Very good. Oh, man. I tell you what, a lot of information this evening, a lot of things we didn't cover. You know, again, the message I wanted to give to everyone tonight was just to be prepared and to think about this. And number one, don't be afraid. The goal is to live a happy and victorious life during tumultuous times, because tumultuous times happen. And that's not being doomy, that's just being real. And so as tumultuous times come to you, nature, man-made, economic, social, whatever, rise above all that and do your best to have your own Shangri-La. Maybe you can't join Ney Sey at Shangri-La, make your own. Anyway, that's it, brother. We're out of here. We're running out of time. I want to tell everyone right now, find someone you love, tell them that you love them, and have a plan to act right now. What do you have to say, Ney Sey?
Apegish bimad dizi wewian.
Translate, please.
May your path be exactly what it should be.
Wow. And that's a very good thing to tell everyone and to share with everyone. Thank you for listening this evening. And if you're in an affected area, take care of it right now and help those around you and hope for the best. That's it. We'll be back on Thursday. Good night and God bless.
Toodles.